Okay, we are live. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. I apologize for running a few minutes behind. I got stuck in a meeting that I was excited about, so it went a little bit longer, and I had to come in and get our new setup all put back together. But my name is David Heacock. I am the founder and CEO of FilterBuy. I am on a mission to build the world's leading indoor air quality company. But in the last decade or so, I built a $250 million business and probably made every mistake under the book, or every mistake under the sun, I should say. And I want to hopefully help you to avoid some of the mistakes that I have made along the way. And so I do this Q&A every Friday at 11 a.m. To take your questions. Anything about business is fair game. I'll do my best to bring as much value as I can to help you with whatever situation it is you're looking for some help with. But I love entrepreneurship. I love business, and I love talking about it. And I would like nothing more than to see a community of you really go out and build things that add value to both your life and to the people around you. And that is really what entrepreneurship, when done well, gives you the chance to do. And that is why I am so passionate about it. And I hope that all of you are passionate about it for all of the right reasons. We're sitting here the middle of February, I guess the smack middle of February on Valentine's Day. And it's hard for me to believe that we're already, about a tenth of the way through the year. And I kind of say to myself, wow, in order to accomplish everything that I've set out to do this year, I really better get to work. And I've really felt the pressure around that in the last month or so. And to be honest with you, I spent a lot more time really grinding and working than I have being able to film and do content and promote content. And I really intend to change that over the coming weeks, because I am so committed to figuring out a way to build a community around entrepreneurship and around business. And I really enjoy this aspect of what I'm doing, but I haven't been able to give it as much time and energy as I would like recently. But you're going to see that change, and I appreciate you sticking around and taking this journey with me. So with that, I guess I should say hit the like button. Michael always reminds me to tell you to hit the like button, because that is what allows me to continue to do these live streams if people show up and actually seem to enjoy it. So the more that the more feedback that we get, the more likely we're going to continue to do more and more of these. So I really would appreciate it if you hit the like button, as silly as that sounds. I would also appreciate it if you watch the videos we put out every week. We really put a lot of work into those, and really are doing our best to find ways to keep them interesting while also delivering like real actual value that hopefully you can't maybe not see from other influencers. And you're going to see in the next few weeks, we're going to kind of shift that style just a little bit, where my challenge to both myself and to the team is I really want to add value, and I want whoever's watching it to feel like they learned something, and we're kind of on my shoulder as I was going out and learning some of these lessons myself, and maybe giving some advice around mistakes that I've made, because almost everything that you hear me talk about comes from a place of pain, more or less, in that I'm so passionate about a lot of the things I talk about because I have made these mistakes myself. And I'm not preaching to you, I'm just trying to say, hey, these are some mistakes that I've made that I think you'll be better off not making if you don't have to. Maybe make different mistakes than me, because we all make mistakes, but don't repeat the stupid stuff that I've done. And it's also a reminder to myself not to repeat those same mistakes twice. So with that, I guess we will take some questions. Michael, if you want to load the first question. What's happening here? Everything's happening here. Hey, next week, could you talk about the specifics of negotiating a deal with a client? How do you present yourself in a way that instills such confidence in the client that you're the right choice? It is all really about having mutual connections. Is it really all about having mutual connections and making under the table deals? that's the impression I got from an old boss. The fear of being rejected from deals is what's really holding me back from approaching the big players. Negotiating is something that I have thought a lot about in the last few weeks, and I've actually had to do a lot of it myself in the last few weeks, and I've been thinking about doing some deep dive videos on this. And so you just pushed me in one of our next videos. I really will do a deep dive on negotiating because I think it is so important. But I'll give you some highlights here, at least that have been top of mind for me. But first and foremost, if you're going in, it sounds like you're talking about negotiating to really, you're trying to sell. What you're asking seems more like a sales question than a negotiating question, at least based off of how I read it, because you're trying to make a deal with somebody. You want them to actually buy something from you. And rule number one is very simple, and that is you have to bring value to whoever it is that you are trying to get a deal done with. It's like if you cannot articulate clearly to yourself and to them the value that you are bringing, then you're probably not going to win that negotiation. And quite frankly, you probably shouldn't win that negotiation, because the whole point about a win-win negotiation is a mutual exchange of value. That is ultimately what matters. And I think, what I'm reading in your question, and this is not a knock on you at all. This is just kind of what I kind of take away from your question is you're nervous about whether or not you're really bringing value to those big players that you referenced in your table, and only you can ultimately answer that for yourself if you're truly bringing value. Like if you really have value that you can unlock for someone that is unique to you and that you're the right partner for, then I think negotiating becomes quite easy because it's something you really believe in and you're passionate about, and people understand that. Like even if it's subconscious, people understand when somebody is legitimate or not, or somebody is truthful or not, or someone is really knowledgeable or not. And like you have to be able to exude that when you go into a negotiation if you want to be successful. And so that's why rule number one is you got to actually deserve it, because if you don't deserve it, you're probably better off not showing up to that negotiation in the first place. You need to go out and earn whatever it takes to deserve it. And once you deserve it, then that's when you show up to the negotiation. And then after that, it's really about finding a way to articulate that to someone and really demonstrate it in an undeniable way. And I find that the way that I'm able to do that, or what I find to be most important, is you have to know more than anybody else at that negotiating table about whatever it is that you're trying to sell or whatever you're trying to get done. Having that knowledge ultimately becomes your power, because that's another thing, that if people understand that you really are the expert in whatever it is that you're talking about or whatever you're negotiating about, then they will, even if it's subconsciously, respect you and respect what it is that you're saying, and they're going to be more likely to listen to you and more likely to want to partner with you because you have that knowledge that they may lack in that situation. So that would be kind of my second thing is you want to know more than anybody else at the table about whatever the subject is that you're coming in and negotiating about or trying to do a deal about. And then just the last piece of advice, and then I promise I will do a long thing about negotiating, because I think it is so important, and it's so multifaceted with it. But this is kind of like riffing on like your actual question, but you can't let fear hold you back. Like if you really have something to offer and you really know the value that you're bringing, and that maybe the person you're dealing with doesn't quite fully understand it, and you want to go in and sell it to them, don't be afraid of taking the shot and go in, having those big meetings and giving it a shot. And sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're going to lose, and early on you may lose more than you win, but that is practicing, and you're going to get better, and you're going to get better at it. And as long as you really have value that you're bringing, and you really have the knowledge of what it is that you're doing business in, then over time, if you put yourself in the position to have enough reps and enough bites at the apple, or whatever you want to say, you're going to ultimately find success. And so you have to have that persistence. And you can't let fear be the thing that's holding you back from going in and having those big meetings. So those would be the three things that I would be thinking about based off of your question as it relates to negotiation. So I hope you're able to use some of those tactics and find something that works for you. New Money Talks. Oh, I know who that is. What's up, David? John, if that's you, nice to hear from you. I'm glad that even big shots like you tune in every once in a while to listen to some advice, but I don't know that I have much to offer. I think you're doing just fine, but just make sure you keep going out to Vegas and fixing your problems, and you'll be okay. But nice talk, and thank you for the Golden Goose sneakers. I must say that John is maybe the only person that's ever like sent me a gift. It's certainly an influencer gift. He sent me some Golden Goose sneakers, which is like more than kind. So, anyways, thank you for that. What is Ship Dude? So if you need third-party fulfillment, then Ship Dudes. John's got you. We have a video with him, and you can see his business if you need products shipped and fulfilled for you. If you're a Shopify merchant, then John is your guy at Ship Dudes. Okay, and I didn't even charge him for that. That's free for you, John. Next time it's going to be $1,000. Okay, DG Rafov. Could you share your thoughts on the 25% tariff on both sides, Canada and the U.S., especially considering your plan to open Canadian market for your filters? Well, as it relates to it doesn't really affect what we're doing, to be honest with you, because we sell into Canada as it is, and our whole point was we were going to start shipping them in bulk rather than individually into Canada. And because air filter is so much more expensive, the shipping of the air filter is so much more expensive than the air filter itself. Like being able to shift that product to Canada at a much lower price point and then doing the in fulfillment to customers is still going to be much more cost effective for us and ultimately more price competitive for the customer. So it doesn't change what we're doing in Canada at all in any meaningful way. I'm certainly not a tariff expert, and I don't really have a strong opinion one way or another as to what's right or what's wrong with it. I'm sure, like with any tool, there are ways that it can be implemented in a good way and ways it can be implemented in a bad way. And I hope that whatever we end up doing as a country is the right way, whatever that is. And I don't have the magic answer for that one. And we're a U.S. manufacturer first and foremost, and basically all of our 95% of what we sell is in the U.S. And so tariffs are not something that I expect to impact us in a meaningful way. If anything, I think it will be positive for us because some of our competitors manufacture product in other countries, and they're going to presumably be impacted by those tariffs, which would make us more competitive. So I guess selfishly on the margin, it would be more beneficial for us, but it's not something that I spend a ton of time thinking about or worrying about it because it doesn't really directly affect me and there's really nothing I can do about it. So what's the point of me spending a ton of time worrying about it? I think as I've talked about before, we're in the process of launching some new products in like the air purification market and the cabin air filter market for cars. And a lot of those are currently manufactured overseas. We're manufacturing everything in the US. And I do think that could be a tailwind for us in the launches of those products. So we could be beneficiaries there. But that's basically the extent that I've thought about tariffs. It's not changing any of my investment decisions, but it's mostly because I've set up a business that is not hugely impacted by tariffs one way or another. So if I wasn't a business that was impacted by tariffs, then it's something that I would have to be a lot more thoughtful about. And the way you do that is by understanding your business and understanding the situation you're in, and then exploring your options. And there's always an option. Some of them may just be less palatable to you than you would like, but there are always ways to solve these problems. You just have to look at the lay of the land and look at the rules that you've been given and figure out the best way to excel through that. And that's really the best that we all can do. And so that is what I would recommend with that. And I do think there's going to be a lot of changes, particularly with like the section, I think 321 loophole that's been closed. I actually talked about that before on some news programs about how I wasn't sure exactly what was going to happen with the new administration, but I imagined that it was going to ultimately be closed, and it was, I believe, a week ago, and there's a lot of uncertainty around that, and oftentimes I would say in uncertainty, there's actually opportunity within that, and I think if I were a U.S. based manufacturer or a U.S. based brand, or like if I was in John's case as a 3PL, I would really be looking to take advantage of this because I think you're going to find that a lot of the kind of 3PL or a lot of shipments that were routed from either China or Mexico directly are ultimately, they're going to find it cheaper to ship product in bulk into the U.S., which is going to increase the demand for the third-party logistics in the U.S. And so I think people like John that are positioned to take advantage of that will likely do well with it, and there's a lot of opportunity in that market, I suspect. So that's all I've got for you on tariffs. Rod, David, how do you negotiate with FedEx? Well, that's I for various reasons it's not in my best interest. Like I don't want to. I can't talk too specifically about our specific negotiation because we do actually have like NDAs and stuff that come with it. But it really goes back exactly to the negotiating advice that I gave 2 questions ago, and the answer is you have to have more information than anybody else at the table. And with freight negotiation, that's extremely difficult because they are set up to have more information than you. And if you look at their pricing agreements, there's a ton of surcharges and all the discounts that you have to negotiate on those surcharges. And understanding that is incredibly complex. And it's something that, because freight is such a big portion of our cost structure, it's something that I have really taken on myself over the years and actually built the internal models that we look at to when we're going through these freight negotiations, because we're able to understand how each of the surcharge impacts ultimately are in cost in any given time frame. And so it's a very complex annoying thing to go in and build that model, but I really don't think that there is any other way than to really understand your business and all of the kind of how all the surcharges affect your business. And then once you do that, you've got to go out and you've got to find leverage. How do you find leverage? Well, you have UPS. You also have Amazon Logistics now that's out there, offering competitive logistics to people. You got the Postal Service, and you want to engage all of them and go through this process with all of them. Even if you ultimately want to stick with one, that having that knowledge and knowing where other people are pricing it is what can give you the leverage when you need to go back and negotiate with FedEx. And the last thing I would say, and something that I used early on, is there are a number of companies that specialize in freight negotiations, because like if you don't have the bandwidth or the knowledge or the understanding of what's possible to negotiate, maybe you need to go out and hire an expert that does. And oftentimes they will help you to negotiate freight contracts for a percentage of savings that you would be getting from those freight contracts. And early on, I definitely used those types of services, and it's something that I would recommend doing if you're early on and you just don't have any kind of context or place to start. One tip on that is generally they will charge 20%, if I'm not mistaken, of the savings that you can get. If you are a growing business and you expect your freight to continue to grow, I would suggest negotiating a fixed fee that you can still pay over the life of the contract that you're negotiating. And I did that a couple of times, and it really keeps your costs down, because 20% of savings today may only be 10% of savings in a year if you grow, if you doubled your business or whatnot. And if you're doing that 20% of savings, then you're going to be paying 20% of that higher number in that situation. So you're generally better off fixing the actual cost up front, and most of those services will allow you to do that if you ask. So that would be one inside baseball tip that I would give you if you're going to go and use one of these services to help in that negotiation. But ultimately, it boils down to getting the right information, knowing more information, hopefully, than even your FedEx rep, which is a very hard thing to do. But the way you do that is by really understanding your numbers, the things that really impact your business, and then going out and seeing how other people in the market price it. And so that's really the only way you can do it if you're not going to use a third-party service to help you in the negotiation. Nicotes, hey David, does the company systematically talk to customers from post-purchase questionnaires to interviews with them? Is there a process you have to get feedback? The answer is yes. I mean, of course, we have we solicit customer reviews. We do post-checkout surveys, and those change from time to time. Sometimes if we're trying to get specific feedback on a specific feature or a specific offering, we'll do that. Within our service business, we will oftentimes, have somebody actually call the customer for a follow-up to make sure that the customer is happy and has gotten and that there's nothing lingering that we need to address. And they will also in the service business send text messages, if I'm not mistaken, asking for reviews and for feedback. So those are all the kind of various ways that we do it. I will say that early on, I think I've gone on record as saying that for the first 2 or 3 years of the business, I did all the customer service myself. And in really like developing the business and developing the product, I think that as painful as that is, that it's invaluable in reality, because it really helps you to understand the pain points for your customers. And there's really no better way of doing that than dealing with all the problems, which customer service by definition is dealing with all the problems. And so the first 2 or 3 years of the business, I did all of that myself, and it really helped me to understand the customer journey and the pain points around the customer journey. And I think that was really important. The other thing that may or may not be in your question, but I think it's worth thinking about, is I also like to observe the customer journey through the website, and there are tools that allow you to actually see how a customer is interacting with your website, like what they're clicking on and how their mouse is moving and where their eyes kind of are going and this kind of stuff. I believe we use a company called Hotjar, but there are a lot of them that do this. And especially early on, I spent a lot of time really understanding how customers interact with us. And sometimes what customers do is just as valuable or more valuable than what they say, right? And so observing that behavior and really kind of seeing how customers react to certain landing pages or certain price points and all of this kind of stuff is ultimately very important. But reading all your product reviews, doing customer service early on. If you're in the service-based business, making sure you're calling and getting direct feedback from your customers. Those are all kind of suggestions that I would have if I were in your shoes. Shamika, hey, love what you do. In manufacturing, so many challenges come up. Product rejects, supply chain issues, and scaling efficiently. When you're in the early stages, how do you find the right team? No matter what business you're in, challenges always come up. I hate to tell you. So it's oftentimes easy to think the grass is greener on some other business, but I don't think it's unique just to manufacturing. It's just a fact of life. So just make sure that when you're framing your business and where you are in your business, don't frame yourself as being uniquely challenged. Because I just don't think that that's helpful in kind of the mindset that it's going to take if you want to be successful. Like either you're committed to making a manufacturing business work or you're not. So that's just a little mindset tip that I would kind of give you off the bat with that. I know this is probably controversial advice, but it's what worked for me and what I firmly believe. But early on, you really need to rely on yourself as the entrepreneur to build the systems and to figure out the processes in the beginning. If you're relying on other people to do it, I think it's going to be a way more difficult road for you because it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to hire someone that is going to be the kind of magic bullet to whatever manufacturing process you're trying to solve. I think you have to go in and you have to own it, and you have to really understand it yourself before you can start really hiring people to kind of be your team to do that process. So I think that the reality is early on, it's got to be you. The caveat to that I would give is that you are likely going to need specialty knowledge in order to be able to do any type of manufacturing process, and it's unlikely that you or any one person knows all of that specialty knowledge. And so generally what I would do is go out and find consultants that can help me to solve specific problems within my process that I'm having, and whether that be through equipment manufacturers. If you partner with them, maybe they will bring you some expertise, or there are implementation consultants that deal with a lot of these equipment manufacturers that specialize in certain processes. And so I would hire specialists on a case-by-case basis to help me to build whatever system that I was looking to build. And so I would rather see you spend your resources in those specialty consultants rather than necessarily trying to hire an expensive team to help you to implement it. So I guess that, I'm the kind of summarize that my advice would be, you've got to own the process yourself. If you're like in a startup in a manufacturing business, then you're not going to be able to outsource that to a team. Like, you're going to need help around you. You have to figure out what type of help is going to be the most beneficial, whether that be somebody that does your finances or somebody that does your HR. That's the type of help that I would look at early on to get those type of tasks off your plate. But if manufacturing is your core competency, then you need to own that manufacturing process. And I think that you have to build the systems and then plug people into that system to sustain it and to hopefully grow it. But early on, you need to own that process. And if you are lacking skills, then I would get those skills by hiring consultants and or partnering with equipment manufacturers. So that would basically be my high level advice for you based off of what I can gather for your situation. I hope you find that to be helpful. Mr. Marcus, much respect, David. What is the importance of cash flow in the early stages of a business? Cash flow is everything. Cash flow is like oxygen. Like, if you don't have oxygen, you can't breathe. If you don't have cash flow, you can't survive as a business. That's just a fact. And by the way, that's true for any stage of your business, whether that early stage or late stage. Cash flow is everything. And I think it's something that it's another topic that I think we're going to do a deep dive in one of our upcoming videos on, because it's something that I think does not get talked about enough, and is oftentimes the thing that gets people in the most trouble, particularly in e-commerce. I think it's particularly challenging because you imagine that the ironic thing about an e-commerce business is that if you're using oftentimes using a overseas manufacturing partner, you have to pay for that inventory up front. Then it sits on the water for 2 months, and then it ends up in a warehouse somewhere that has to then get processed. And then maybe after 3 or 4 months, it is viable for the customer. And then what's going to happen is if you're just launching, you're going to slowly sell it first, and then you're going to start selling more and more, and you're going to say, oh, I got to buy more inventory. Maybe I need to buy double this time. Well, you've got to now pay double the inventory, and you have to, and that's going to take cash that has to come from somewhere. You probably haven't gotten paid from all your initial inventory yet. And you've got to market, you got to do all this other stuff. And so what a lot of people early stages find is that their business is hugely cash flow negative. And people get surprised by that. And by the way, the IRS views inventory as an asset. So like, even if you're cash flow negative, but inventory's on your balance sheet, maybe you're showing a profit in your business, but you're hugely cash flow negative, you still have to pay taxes on that profit that you showed in your business. And the IRS is going to expect to get paid. And this is the cycle that happens to a lot of businesses, e-commerce particularly, but really this could happen to any business. And so the ironic thing about it is that the more you grow, the more negative your cash flow cycle oftentimes is. And I think that a lot of people don't go into business truly understanding that from the beginning. And I think that really ends up causing a lot of distress and a lot of people to give up once they realize that, hey, I'm supposedly making money on paper, but I don't have any cash to pay any expenses, and that's a really difficult place to be. I've cut it too close sometimes in the past, more than I would like. And I tell you, there's no worse feeling than feeling like you have a cash flow problem. It's like needing to breathe and not having oxygen. It's very scary, and that's what not having cash flow feels like. And so I protect cash flow at all costs. And part of the way you do that is really understanding how cash flow moves through your business. And once you really understand how cash flow moves through your business, my guess is it's going to change your behavior. It's going to change the types of things that you invest in. Part of the secret for how I was able to scale this business is because we're able to keep just two weeks of inventory throughout our whole system. And be able to replenish that, because we manufacture all of our own products effectively real time. So rather than having that 3-month plus inventory cycle that I just talked about, that oftentimes e-commerce companies have, we've compressed that to about 2 weeks. When you include raw materials, is more than that. But from a finished goods perspective, it's about 2 weeks of inventory on hand at any given time, which makes our business way more cash flow efficient. And so if our business model was built to be cash generative, and the reason that's the case is because I learned this lesson the hard way. This is actually one of those great lessons that I would love to teach you to think about early on, because what is your cash flow situation going to be as this business scales? I kind of learned that what I was doing was going to be very cash flow negative, and I needed to change my business model. And that's what ultimately led me to actually manufacturing the filters, because I realized that I was going to be able to kind of make the inventory just in time, which is going to keep me from having to keep huge amounts of inventory, which is going to allow me not to outlay large amounts of cash. And so that was kind of one of those insights that I found early on in my business model that allowed me to scale. And I think that people would be better served early on in their business journey, really thinking about the cash flow dynamics of the business that they're entering into, and what it's going to look like if you actually do scale that business. If you double, triple, quadruple your business, what is that going to do to your cash flow? And so many business models you will find all of a sudden do not look nearly as compelling as they did before, because the cash outlays are actually a lot more than you think. And just one thing that came to mind to me on it, I did a short form on it, and there's an influencer I have a lot of respect for, actually, named Cody Sanchez, who does a lot of great stuff around buying boring businesses. But I think it's super smart, and I think that she gives a lot of great advice. But one thing that I would take issue a little bit with is, like, she did this whole thing around car washes, and saying how great of a cash flow business a car wash is. And I just don't believe that that's the case, especially not at scale, because you have to either buy or rent the land, first of all, and the land, if you buy it, you ultimately have a lot of environmental issues, and if you rent it, then you're beholden to whoever the landlord is, because if you're successful, they're just going to raise their rent, and they know you can't replace it, so you're kind of screwed. So you got that, but then on top of that, you have the actual machinery of a car wash, right? I mean, especially now, you have all these automated car washes that would be expensive to build and then expensive to maintain. And so that is what you call depreciation or depreciable assets. And so it may look like it has good cash flow on the offset, but then you're going to have to pay to maintain and to ultimately replace all of that equipment, which, when you take that into account, the cash flow dynamics of something like a car wash are likely not as good as they look to be from the outset. And one hack that I have, if I'm ever looking at this kind of stuff, is, and car washes are a good example, because I was kind of curious when I saw her and all these other people talking about it. There are publicly traded companies that are in the car wash space. I don't remember the names of them, so I don't want to push you in the wrong direction, but you can search it, just, car wash, publicly traded, look at their financial statements, look at their income statement, and yeah, they have high gross margins, but then their depreciation is almost as high as their gross margin, which means that at scale, in order to run that business, you have to invest a lot of money over and over again in that business to be able to maintain it. And so when you take things like that into account, that kind of deferred maintenance, a lot of times these businesses are not nearly as good, and they don't cash flow nearly as well as they may, as you may think at the outset. And so understanding your cash flow and the dynamics of your specific business is super important. And before I got into any industry or in any business, I would really understand the dynamics of how are you actually collecting money? When are you paying your vendors? How much inventory are you going to have? What are the terms of your inventory going to be? All of those basic things, you need to understand that and then model out what that's going to look like if you're at $1 million of sales, $2 million of sales, $5 million of sales. Like how much capital are you going to have to generate in order to be able to fund that? Because that capital is going to have to come from somewhere, either from investors or from the cash flow of your business. And so if you model it out, you'll have like actual realistic expectations of what it's going to take for you to run that business. And I think a lot of people enter into a business without understanding all of those kind of subtle, insidious things that they're gonna creep in and really change your profit dynamics and your cost structure. And so, yeah, that was the long answer to your question, but the short answer to your question is cash flow is everything. It's like oxygen, and you've got to understand it. And that's rule number one for a CEO or an entrepreneur, is understanding your cash flow, because you can't live without it. Okay, what's next? Hubert, have you started manufacturing HEPA filters, metal box? How do you tell the difference between a MERV 8 and MERV 13 filter visually as a customer? Well, the answer is technically yes, we have started manufacturing HEPA filters, but we have not started marketing and really selling them yet. So it's actually, that is on our pipeline for this year in our new products launch. And we have started actually manufacturing them, but we haven't really started broadly marketing them yet, but that should change over the next couple of months. But it's definitely something that we are doing. In terms of your MERV 8 and MERV 13 question, it's actually a very good question. But in FilterBuy's case, uniquely, we have white MERV 8 media and a blue MERV 13 media. So if you buy a FilterBuy filter today, then you know what MERV rating it is simply by the color of the media. Because with our manufacturing partner, Kimberly-Clark, who makes all of our media, they only make our media in white for MERV 8 and for blue for MERV 13. Now, just to be clear, this was not always the case. So if you have a previous MERV 13 filter from FilterBuy that was white, no, we were not scamming you. It was MERV 13 media. It was just we used to only have white media for all of our MERV ratings, or at least for the MERV 8 and MERV 13. Because we wanted to make sure that there was no customer confusion, we made the decision to work with our manufacturing partner to change the color of the media for each MERV rating that we are selling. So MERV 8 in our case is white, MERV 11 is kind of a yellow gold, and MERV 13 is blue. And that is like the only media that we buy in each of those MERV ratings for our pleated air filters, at least, is in one of those three colors. So the customer knows exactly what MERV rating it was based off of the color of the media. It used to be that I could tell the difference between like a MERV 8 and a MERV 13 just by feel, because the MERV 8 was kind of thinner than the traditional MERV 13. But in the last 5 years or so, the technology around MERV 13 has shifted a lot and has made it a lot thinner. And so it's not really distinguishable by touch, at least not to me. And I don't think that there really is a way to tell the difference visually as a customer. And a lot of the at-home tests and whatnot that people show are not actually accurate. You would have to send it off to a third-party lab, which we do periodically for each of our filters, in order to get them properly tested in a proper environment. And so like there's really no visual way, except for in our case where we actually do have the different colors where you can tell, but there's no visual way as a customer, if you're getting MERV 13 media or MERV 8 media that's white, there's no reliable way that you're going to be able to tell the difference between them that I'm aware of. And that's exactly why we wanted to solve that problem by having the different colors for each of the MERV ratings. The other thing that I would just note on this, for people that want to geek out, is that generally you'd have a different pleat count in your MERV 8 versus your MERV 13, because the MERV 13 requires a higher pleat count in order own that media in order to meet the MERV 13 requirements. So at least in our case, the MERV 13 has more pleats per foot than the MERV 8, and I think you're going to find that in most cases. So that would be one visual cue, is like if there are more pleats per foot than a MERV 8, then you would probably say, hey, that's the MERV 13. But that would be the only visual cue that I would really know that would be kind of reliable in trying to determine that. So hope that helps you answer whatever question you're looking for. Mike Anuta, how do you look at acquiring a company when you don't have enough assets to put down a down payment? You might want to wait until you do. It might be one piece of advice, not because I actually think you need money necessarily to buy a business, and we'll talk about other ways you can do it. But you may just not be in a position yet that you're really ready to fund that business in the way that it's going to take to be successful. And maybe you'd be better off going out and getting some knowledge, building some skills that would hopefully help you to build that down payment, and also to learn what you're going to need in order to be successful in that business. That's exactly what I did, by the way. Is like I worked for somebody else for 7.5 years or so, and I saved all the money that I could, and I learned a lot about myself and about life and about how to do business in general, and ultimately was able to use those savings and those skills that I learned to build the business that I have today. And so I definitely wouldn't rush into anything just because you want to be a business owner, because oftentimes you're going to find out all the reasons why that business is so difficult, or maybe not as good as you think once you actually do acquire it. And I would hate to see you or anybody do that from a place of not having the resources to fix it. And I just think that's a precarious situation to put yourself in, and it's not something that I would suggest. But I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, and the business that you're going to buy very well. You've worked in the industry for a long time. It's a hidden gem. You know how to run it. If you can take all of those boxes, then the best way to do it would be through some type of owner financing and bank debt. And like one thing that I would look at is if the business itself has assets that a bank will lend against, then what you do is you take the balance sheet or the assets of that business, take it to a bank and say, hey, if I own this business, how would you think about lending money to me against that business? And then the bank is likely going to tell you, we will fund up to 85% of your working capital, which would just be like inventory generally, and then we will fund 60% of your real estate value. I'm just making up numbers, but they'd probably be in that kind of order of magnitude. And then you can look at it and you can say, okay, well, how much cash is this giving me? And then you go back to the owner and say, I want to buy your business, and I will put down, call it 50%, whatever the bank agreed to give you against whatever the assets of that business are. And then the other 50%, I want to you to give me an owner's note where I'm going to pay you interest for over a 5-year period or whatever time frame you decide, and you're going to pay them back out of the cash flow from that business. And then the owner would generally have a lien on that business until you pay that owner's note back. And so there would be ways, if you find the right seller and the right owner, and you have that business has assets that you can take to a bank and get financing, there are ways that you can actually get enough cash to buy a business without putting any cash down. If you wanted to take it to the extreme, there are two ways you could do it. One, you can find deals that are 100% owner financing. It's definitely possible. Generally, I would say that's going to be in an asset light business. So if there's no assets that actually come with that business, and it's more like customer relationships and this kind of stuff, those are the types of industries that generally will allow just full owner buyouts. Think like maybe like accountants or any type of service business, whereas client relationships, it incentivizes the owner to make sure there's a smooth transition because they want the cash flow to be able to get their purchase price back. And it allows you to purchase the business and run it and let them to retire if that's what they want generally in those situations. So that would be an extreme example that does work. I don't know it's situational based. Another extreme example would be like you could find ways where you could actually get a bank to loan, call it 70% against the assets, still take a 50% owner's note, and then you actually get 20% of that purchase price from the bank that you can either put into your pocket or put into the business in order to grow it. I have actually seen deals like that happen, and it's definitely possible, but you have to know what you're doing. Generally, I would only recommend doing either of these things if you really understand the industry that you're going into and really understand the business that you're running and the cash flow dynamics of that business. See the previous question. And if you understand all of those things, then it's definitely possible to buy a business with no cash down. And anybody that's telling you otherwise is lying. But also, there are a lot of people out there that are telling people to go out and do these strategies at scale. There's a guy named Dan Pena who's quite famously does it. He's very bombastic, quite an interesting guy. I'd love to meet him one day because he seems like a fascinating character. And he's built a whole business off of basically teaching people how to do it. I'm a little skeptical that it's the right way to really start and go out and build a big business, but there are certainly examples of people that have done it like 100% off of owner financing, or the 100% off of owner financing and bank debt. It's definitely possible. I just think that you need, like my opinion, which Dan and other people may very well disagree with me, but my opinion is you're going to be better off if you really understand the industry that you're trying to do this in, because otherwise, my suspicion is you're going to get into some deals and realize they're not nearly as good as you think, and you're kind of, by definition, scraping the bottom of the barrel. If you're going to people that are going to be willing to do this creative financing with you, they're probably not businesses that a lot of other people want to buy, because otherwise they would just sell it to those people that were looking to buy it. And oftentimes in life, if it's too good to be true, there's a reason for it. And so you're going to find there's a lot of operational hairiness in these types of businesses that you'd be going after. So I would just make sure that you really understand what you're getting into before you do it. But it's certainly possible. And I definitely would not discourage you from using those types of alternative financing strategies. It can make a ton of sense, but you just better know what you're doing, and you know that. So just make sure you have the self-awareness to know where you are, and if you need to go out and get experience, if you don't know what you're doing yet, you've not worked in that industry, I would much rather see you go out and get a few years of experience working for somebody else before going out and doing a deal like this. I actually think that it will save you a lot of money and a lot of brain damage if you take that approach. So just don't rush it. That's the only thing I ask if you're going to take that advice. Okay, Michael, what's next? Anime Insight English. How to market D2C brand if Facebook's ads are not profitable. There would be a million ways to answer that question, and any of which could work. And I don't know anything enough about your business to tell you. I've never been able to make Facebook ads work at scale. Just for full disclosure, like we advertise on Facebook some, but like it's never been profitable or made sense for me. I know there are a lot of direct-to-consumer businesses that are built completely off of Facebook ads, but it's not something that's ever worked for us. So Facebook ads in and of themselves are definitely not worse or not the only way to make it sell a direct-to-consumer product. No, it is. How about the microphone? Is the microphone good now? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. We're getting closer on the tech issues, but we're not there yet. Anyways, to go back to your question, that TikTok Shops is probably top of mind for me right now. I know that it's still kind of in this nebulous place in the U.S. and you can't download the app. I suspect, like I still bet that will change, and we're still investing in it. And still seeing a lot of action and traction there. So it's definitely something that I would consider investing in if I were you. But like social selling in general, partnering with influencers, whether like maybe that's through affiliate commissions with influencers, that can be a good way to do it if you have a good enough product, or there are big businesses that have been built off of giving influencers equity that already have an audience, right? And then you can use their audience for kind of free, distribution, if they if they have a loyal enough audience that's actually going to buy your product. There are any number of ways to sell a direct to consumer product. There's direct mail, works for certain industries. That would be a way of doing it. Catalog marketing, believe it or not, still works. I still know of big businesses that thrive off of that today. Google ads, if you're like if you're in a business that already has high intent driven demand, like air filters, Google, while expensive, is still a good way to acquire customers. Amazon still works. It's more competitive than it was 10 years ago, more competitive than it was 5 years ago, more competitive than it was a year ago, but it still works, and still ways to break out and build big businesses on it. So there are any number of ways to grow a direct-to-consumer business. The only thing that makes me a little bit nervous based off of you gave me no context in your question. So, I just have to infer a little bit. But like, you guys have to make sure that you're offering a product that customers actually want. Before if Facebook ads aren't working, I would say, okay, why aren't they working? If they aren't working just because Facebook in itself is not a good channel for you, then go find a better channel. I just gave you 5 of them. There are a lot more out there, go to ChatGPT, like what channel. I asked ChatGPT the same questions. They're going to give you, a whole other set of channels probably, for you to experiment with. And then you got to think to yourself, I wonder within these channels, where are my customers? And go out and, dig deep on that channel, really understand it, and go out and find your customers there and build your business there. But if your Facebook ads are not working because your product is not good enough, or your margins are not good enough for you to be able to scale, then you probably need to go out and find another business. So like, I think that self-awareness of understanding which bucket you're in there is really where I would start. And unfortunately, more often than not, you're probably in the bucket that you don't have a good enough product or a business that truly can scale, because the economics don't work. I hope not. Like, if you truly know the answer to those questions is yes, you can scale it, and yes, you do have the economics, and yes, you do have the best product, but just Facebook specifically doesn't work, then go out and find, partner with an influencer, or get on TikTok and start making your own TikTok ads, or hire somebody else to help make TikTok ads for you. All of those types of things are, they're all viable. They work for a lot of other people, so they certainly could work for you. But you have to be self-aware to know, like, whether or not you're in the bucket of whether or not you deserve, or your product deserves, to really be successful or not. And I think that's the first question I would be asking myself if I were in your shoes. What's next, Michael? I can go a little bit longer. Joseph Cruz, what are your top 5 interview questions to make sure the person is a good hire? I don't have a good advice for you on this, if I'm honest with you. It depends. I would not say that it is a skill set that I am like the best at, to be honest with you. I think I've gotten a lot better at it. Just from experience in hiring people. I think you do get better. You do get better with it. But it very much depends on what I'm interviewing them for, what I'm looking for them to do. I've kind of shifted more as we've grown into really only hiring people that have already done whatever task it is that we're looking for them to do. Early on in my career, I made the mistake of hiring aspirationally and hiring people that have a lot of potential, that I really jive with, that I think could do very well, but maybe don't have the proper experience yet. And I think, oh, they're smart, they're talented. I can teach them to do all the details of what we need. And more often than not, for me, that process failed because they don't have the experience of doing whatever it is that I was, looking for them to, whatever problem I was looking for them to solve, right? And so, more and more, I'm looking for people that have solved problems already that are at least similar to the problems I'm trying to solve. It's like all of the questions that I'm going to ask are going to be to help me understand how deep their knowledge is around whatever the problem is I'm looking to solve. So, like if they're in retail, or and I want to really understand what their experience with retailers are, and do a deep dive on their experience with that. And like all of my questions are going to be really trying to see how much depth that person has, how much knowledge that person has in that experience. And then at the same time, I really want to understand, I'm going to present with them problems that I'm dealing with, or that we as a business are dealing with, and just try to get an understanding of how they would solve them without knowing all the information, right? Like, how are they thinking about it? How are they thinking about solving that problem? That oftentimes, at least in my experience, gives me the context that I need to know whether or not they really have the knowledge and experience to be able to solve that that you know that problem that we're looking for to solve by hiring someone. So that's how I think about it. That may not be the answer you wanted. We'll do two more questions, Michael. Eric Rodriguez, what traits would you want to see in a son or daughter to determine if they're a better fit for college or potentially getting into the workforce early with the goal of becoming an entrepreneur? That's a good question. Um, my kids are younger, so my oldest is only 9, so I haven't quite had to deal with this problem yet. So, I'm always reluctant to give advice, especially parenting advice, when I haven't lived it yet. And so, just for full disclosure, I have not lived that yet, and so I do not want to take that away from anybody that has or is living through it. So, I'll just caveat this by that. It ultimately comes down to self-awareness, both as you as a parent and for that child. Some people really thrive in an academic structured environment, and kind of need that. And I think that for that type of person, then having the structured environment from 18 to 21 or 22, whatever, can be super helpful for that person. Help them to have some structure as they start to enter adulthood, and it buys them time to figure that out, and also brings like a social networking aspect that I think can be super valuable. And so that would be that type of person I would probably kind of encourage to go into a college environment. Whereas, like, if I had somebody, a child that was struggling in high school, or maybe not struggling, but just wasn't really into it, like wasn't really taking it that seriously, just and more because they just didn't see the value in it, and they had a lot of other interests that they were already pursuing, and they were driven in those interests, and they really wanted to go out and be an entrepreneur. Then honestly, I would let them go be an entrepreneur, and I think that and that's okay. And I think that that's probably a viable thing for most people. Like the other thing that you really have to think about is, like, how much debt are they going to have to go into in order to go into college? Like, I think that the more debt that you're going to have to go into in order to either you as a parent or for the child, for them to go to college, the higher the bar for them to go to college needs to be, because that just ultimately becomes like something around a young person's neck, which actually ironically forces them to conform and go into a job rather than being entrepreneurial and taking more risk. And I think that's really sad. And so, like, I think that the more debt you have to take, the higher the bar for going to college needs to be. And like, if I was going to go into a lot of debt for it, I say, like, okay, well, like, what is your exit plan from college? Like, how do you plan to pay that back? Are you like, is your dream to be a lawyer or to be a doctor, like, or whatever it is? then those are viable paths for going to college and taking on some debt, as you are going to presumably have a salary that's going to be able to help you to pay that later on. So you really have to have the self-awareness around that, and around the child, in order to be able to make that decision. I think that today, with all the resources that we have at our disposal so cheaply, and the ability to learn so cheaply, like, honestly, I think that more and more people are going to find that going to college just doesn't make sense, and the driven people are going to be the ones that actually going to go out and learn anyways, regardless of whether or not they're paying, going to whether or not they're paying to go to college or not. They're going to be curious enough to learn and to use the free resources at their disposal. So why pay to learn what's interesting to you? And the last thing I'll say is, like, the workforce is just completely changing. I mean, undeniably, in front of our eyes. And I think a lot of, like, what is traditional, like, office jobs are likely not going to look the same 10 or even 5 years down the road. And so that makes things like the trades way more viable, I think, and way more interesting. And it's and ultimately going to be way more profitable, because that's where the demand is now. And we're already seeing it. And there's a big reason why I am so interested in the service businesses and in physical products businesses, because I don't think that it's likely that AI or robotics or whatnot is going to replace those in the next 20 years, maybe 20 plus years. All bets are off. But in the next 20 years or so, I think there are going to be a lot of viable options within the trades, or within those more of, like, traditional blue collar jobs, are ironically going to be the most sought after, most well paid, and offer, like, very good, stable opportunities to people, and also entrepreneurship opportunities to people. And so, like, if I had a kid that was interested in that, I would encourage them to go work in a trade, get licensed, work for a well-run company, and then use that experience to go out and become entrepreneurial, when they're 25 or whatever, and still super young and have a ton of energy. But then they have the experience and the knowledge, and hopefully have saved some money in order to be able to go out and do it. Okay, Michael, I told you I'd do one more, so I'm a man of my word. We'll do one more, even though that was long. Beck W., can you share your experience working with Dr. Gerner? I'm really interested in how you approach mindset. I'm a huge fan of Dr. Gerner, and I highly recommend following her on Twitter. Or on X. I think she's probably one of the best X follows if you're really interested in mindset. And she works with a lot of interesting people and has so much experience and context to be able to bring to the table. And so I'm very thankful for her and for the time I get to spend with her. For me, it really comes down to forcing kind of accountability. I think I've talked about this in some of our long form videos, but I started this business. I own the business. I don't have a board of directors. So I don't have kind of built-in accountability that, some startups that are funded and have partners and whatnot would. And it's important for me to really build that accountability into my life. And, I kind of view working with her as the same way I do working with my personal trainer, in that, she forces accountability to me. And, every week I speak with her for an hour. I have to basically articulate to her how I'm spending my time, what I'm focused on, why I'm focused on it, maybe work through some problems that I'm dealing with. And, I kind of view it as, she is my thought partner in allowing me to work through those issues and to reframe it, my mindset, and make sure that I am focusing on the things that I really need to be focusing on, and the things that matter, and not getting kind of caught up in things that I shouldn't be or don't matter. And I know that every week on Monday morning, I speak with her at 9:30 every Monday morning. And, I already know, I've already come into that meeting prepared, because I do my Sunday planning. I come into that meeting prepared with, like, what did I accomplish the week before, and what am I looking to accomplish, or what have I committed to accomplish in the following week. I have to articulate that to her, and then make sure I'm delivered on what I did in the previous week, and commit to what I'm going to do in the next week, and kind of work through the problems or the things that I'm kind of uncertain about how to approach it. It gives me a forum to really just talk about it with somebody that is very smart and capable, and also just has a lot of context and even context at this point around me, to make sure that I'm being honest with myself, right? And she's great at that, amongst many other things. But that is why I value that time that I have with her. It comes down to accountability, enforcing that accountability in my life, and making sure that I'm being honest with myself. And I think we're the easiest person to fool is yourself, and that's just reality. And I think that having to kind of back up my actions every single week, and and by explaining them to her, forces me to be on my best behavior consistently, and that I find invaluable. So thank you all for showing up. Really appreciate it. Had a lot of great questions today, and I really enjoy that. I think the quality of the questions we're getting are getting better, and I really enjoy kind of learning a little bit about you, or what the things you're struggling with, potentially through the questions, and it will hopefully help to reframe some of our future content that we put out. So thank you so much for joining. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern.